I'm going to go through kind of slowly just to make sure you got the idea. But the thing is, sometimes you can get an answer that doesn't actually work. Fill that in. That's called extraneous. We've seen those before. An extraneous answer is an answer that's true for the equation, like for all the work, but when you plug it back in, it doesn't actually work. Or looking at this case now, every problem is different. We want x alone. So if you have just a square root by itself in here, you can always square and do the opposite as long as you do that to both sides. And this one's going to be tricky because it has the minus sign. It's not going to be quite as easy as the other ones. But when you square root and square the same thing, you've got the leftovers, whatever was in the house, x minus 3. But here it's going to be trickier. I'm going to rewrite it as radical 2 minus radical x times radical 2 minus radical x. So what we're going to do? 1 second. First, outside, inside, last. Because our goal now is to get rid of the square root sign because we want to deal with the x's. And the opposite of square rooting is squaring. So I'm squaring both sides of the equation so that I can get rid of the radical signs, at least where the x is concerned.
So why should you do that?
Because squared means you multiply it by itself. So I rewrote it as negative 2 minus radical x and radical 2 minus radical x.
I thought it just takes away the square root.
Nope, that's only if the square root is by itself. But these are two separate square roots and they're not that simple. When there's a minus sign, it changes things. You have to do first outside, inside, last.
All right.
So here, radical 2 becomes 2. That's the first. Do the outside. Radical 2 times radical x is minus radical 2x. And then we're going to do the inside minus radical 2x. And then last is going to be negative radical x times negative radical x. Do you know what that is? Positive x. Good. Okay, carefully think this through. We have x minus 3 equals 2. We have 2 of these now, minus 2 radical 2x, because this is a minus 1 and this is a minus 1. You have negative 2 of them. And then plus x. So what can I do to both sides? What can I do to both sides? Subtract x from both sides. We'll try to make them the same as we go, but when you subtract x, those are gone. You no longer have to worry about that. What else can we do to both sides? I'm trying to get this x now. What can I do right here?
You gotta divide. No, you gotta divide it.
Not yet. I still have this 2 standing alone right here.
So you
Subtract 2 from both sides.
Right.
Negative 5 equals negative 2 radical 2x. Always keeping your goal in mind. You want x alone. So what would you do to both sides? Divide by?
Radical 2.
No, we want the x actually to stay. We're trying to get x alone, so divide by this one.
Oh, it's not the same. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. That one's outside the house, so it has to divide this way. So what we have is positive 5 over 2. I think fractions will be easier than decimals in this case. Equals radical 2x. All I did was cancel these. So now think for a second. That x is stuck underneath the square root, and it's by itself. How can you just get rid of the square root sign?
Multiply.
Square it. Multiply it by itself. Multiply by radical 2x, right? That's the same thing as squaring it. So you do squared and you do squared. As long as you do that to both sides, you're allowed to do it. Almost done. 5 squared is 25. Really, it was warm a minute ago. 5 squared over 2 squared, which is 4. You square the top and you square the bottom, equals 2x. Because the square and the square root went away. Now deal with that fraction. What's the last thing we have to do? We want x alone. Okay, we could divide by 2. I'm going to change it up and make it multiplying by 1/2 just because my other side is a fraction. That's going to make it easier. But dividing by 2, multiplying by the reciprocal, that means the same thing, times 1/2. So my final answer is 25 over what? 8. Good. X equals 25 over 8. However, when you plug it in and check it, it doesn't work. That's called an extraneous solution. If you plug that in, you get 2 things that are not true. And I'll show you that one because we don't have many of them. So I'll show you that case. Let me see if I made space for it. Okay. So let me recopy the exact problem, and I'm going to plug in my answer and show you that it doesn't work. Will someone please read? I remember the radical x minus 3 equals, what is it, radical 2?
Minus radical x.
Okay, so in that, I have to try and check the number x equals 25 over 8. And I'm sorry, but yeah, this has to be done because as the problems get more complicated, sometimes you have something called an extraneous solution. So take it one little piece at a time. We're going to have common denominators. We're going to have everything in here. X is 25 over 8. So it's the square root of 25 over 8. That's like 3 over 1. Can you guys, instead of rewriting that, can we just go ahead and make it a denominator of 8? What would the numerator become? It's 3, but it's 3 over 1. I want to make a denominator of 8. So if I multiply the bottom by 8, multiply the top by 8.
24.
Negative 24. Okay, that's like 3 over 1. I just changed the denominator to 8, so I changed the numerator as well. Equals radical 2 minus the square root of 25 over 8. Plug it in. This one is the square root of 1 over 8, 25 minus 24. So it's the square. I'm going to make it radical 2 over 1. And this is 5 over the square root of 8. Okay? Do you see that? I just did the square root of 25. Can you see that? That's 5. But square root of 8, you can't really simplify. We could break it down, but there's no need when you're checking. We're just seeing if they're equal. All right, so in this case, I need common denominators. What do I multiply the top and the bottom by to get a common denominator?
8.
Radical 8. Because this one says radical 8. So radical 8. All right, so what I have is radical 16 on top. And I have a radical 8 on bottom. And over here, I have a, sorry, that's minus. I have a minus 5 over radical 8. So lastly, the square root of 16 would become 4. And when I simplify it, I do not get 1 over 8. I get negative 1 over radical 8. And the answer does not match. This one would have to be positive. This one's negative. So it's not going to work. Not a solution, which means that, like I showed you before, we cross it off. And that does happen. Okay, when you have some problems for your homework, that does happen, so you've got to be careful to look for that. All right, for the last example we're going to do together, the next letter A, I want you guys to walk me through it. Cross off B. We don't have space. We don't have enough time to do letter B. But let's do example 3, letter A. Cross off the B for that one also. Okay, this combines everything. You need to get x by, or in this case, n by itself, and you have to handle all the rules to do it. This is all multiplied together. What's the first thing you would do then?
Distribute the 2.
Okay, I would...
Or the little...
Okay, I would deal with that, but I would even do this first. Plus 4. Our goal is to get the x by itself, so I'm going to write this as, let me go ahead and rewrite it this way just so you can see it different ways. It's the third root, right, of 7n minus 1 equals 4. All I did was move the 4 over, and I rewrote the exponent as a root. 1/3 means you take the third root. All right, what's next? Divide. Yep. Divide that 2. It's 2 times all of this. So if we divide by 2, we have 4 divided by 2 is 2. So we're left with the third root of 7n minus 1 equals 2. Questions on that? We haven't really done any of the square root stuff yet. All we've done is moved the 4 over and divided by 2. Now here's the hard part, but look at it carefully. If you have a third root by itself, don't square it. What do? Cube. Good. You do the opposite of the root. So if this is a third root, you're going to cube both sides. Make that to the third and make this one to the third. Did you catch that? This is a third root. So don't square both sides. Do the opposite of the root so that those can cancel each other out and leave you with 7n minus 1 equals 8. And then we add 1 to both sides. 7n equals 9. And then, you guys please, we have to still get n by itself. So we have to divide both sides by 7, and n equals 9 over 7. Now it may be extraneous, so we have to check it. 2 times 7 times n, but n is 9 over 7, minus 1 to the 1/3 minus 4 has to equal 0. All I did was take my n equals 9/7 and plugged it in. Parentheses first. Inside the parentheses, 7 times 9 over 7. Yep, the 7s will cancel and you've got 9 minus 1. That whole thing is to the 1/3. It's going to be 8. Good, and then we'll take the third root of that. All I did was reduce the fraction right there. 1 parentheses. Now inside the parentheses, we have 8 to the 1/3, and then we still have minus 4 equals 0. We're not solving now, we're doing PEMDAS. So exponents go next. Let me rewrite this one for you to see it. What does 1/3 mean? Yeah, but if I wrote it as a root? Third root. And what's the third root of 8?
2.
2. So it's 2 times 2 minus 4.
Oh, it does equal 0.
And it does come out equaling 0. Those two sides are equal, so this one is an actual solution. We do keep it. But you need to be aware, if you ever plug it in and check it and it doesn't work, either you made a mistake or it's extraneous, you have to double check yourself.